Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. My name is Winifred Nabakiibi, a civil engineer running a consultancy company that's supporting institutional strengthening in Uganda, mainly in the water sector. I see we are a bit over time, so maybe I need to hurry through this. Let's see how it goes. My presentation is about the role of citizens, stakeholders, and think tanks in the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. We've discussed this quite a bit, the principles of the SDGs, poverty reduction, environmental protection, and building inclusive societies. We've been through that. So, given the aims of the SDGs, how can stakeholders be involved? What would be their role? We see that through Goal 17 is specific, and through its targets, it underpins the importance of partnerships between governments, the private sector, civil society in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So as we have discussed and as many speakers have emphasized, this is quite an uphill task. The word integration has come up many times. And yes, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals requires an integrated approach, which is quite a daunting task. So to explain, to sort of give some insights into how this can be done and how the role of stakeholders can come through, I would like to use an example of a project that we implemented here in Uganda, where we were developing the Water Security Action Plan. So from this, I think we can draw lessons and then we hear more on what roles the different stakeholders can play. So in developing this Water Security Action Plan, we had various stakeholders, governments were involved, government agencies, the big water utility, the Kampala Capital City Authority was involved, private companies were involved, civil society groups were involved, international organizations, specifically DFID, GIZ, academic institutions were involved, as well as individuals. So, this is tantamount to the approach that we require to apply when we are working to achieve the SDGs. So in working on this project, government was there as a collaborator, private companies as businesses needed to come through, civil society had the role of raising awareness, international organizations were facilitating the process, academic institutions also participated, and then individuals. I'll get into the details of the project. So, in developing the Water Security Action Plan, the process involved identifying what are the water security issues that we were facing in Uganda. So in identification of the water security issues, it required that you go to the grassroots, engage with the communities, first of all to explain to them what water security means. And if I can relate it to the Sustainable Development Goals, I think this is also what is required, to go to the grassroots and explain what does this exactly mean. Because when they understand it in their space and in their own understanding, then they can actually share more about how they can contribute based on the issues they are facing. So in developing this Water Security Action Plan, civil societies were used in the in the community involvement, raising awareness with the communities, translating the issues to those grassroots people, and of course, in working out the water security agenda, also businesses have a role to play because we needed to develop interventions that would support the creation of a water security action plan that meets the demands both of the citizens, businesses, as well as government players. So private companies also had to be involved, engaged, explain the issue of water security, and then to get their views on how can they get involved. Can they bring forward money into this water security agenda? So this, for me, I see it having a close relationship in what we can do and how different stakeholders can get involved. But the question usually with the Sustainable Development Goals is, what is it? For example, one person asked, what is it? How can we approach it? And everybody can approach it differently, depending on the context. But for this Water Security Action Plan, I had someone has worked with GIZ before. Maybe you have seen this Water Risk and Action Framework. So they used this framework to support the collaboration and participation of the various stakeholders. Because it was an integration of efforts from different directions, first of all, they start with identifying the stakeholders who will be involved. Together with those stakeholders, they share the problem. What is the issue that we are facing? And together as stakeholders, they prepare the roadmap of what are we going to do about this issue that we are facing. So then they assess, step 2, they assess risks, opportunities, determine costs and benefits, and then they decide how can we work together. Because we hear that even in achieving the SDGs, what is required is collaboration. So the different actors have to sit together, understand the issues, and then decide how can we address these issues together? What role can you play? So I think this framework also has some ideas that we can pick when we are trying to work on the SDGs. Then the commitment of the various stakeholders is needed. It is very important that private sector also plays a part. So in stage 3, we needed them to commit funding to the process of the Water Security Action and Investment Plan implementation. So there we had to develop business cases of, does this make business case for you as a business? If you get involved, then how would
someone yeah, please continue. Oh.
You coordinate and manage the implementation process, and then you monitor progress. I see this actually having some hints that the SDG approach can take. And then eventually, whatever measures you agree to work on together can be taken to scale, where you evaluate impact, lessons learned, and then leverage on that impact and go to scale. Maybe what we can phase out here, or rather what we can cancel out, is the exiting. Because for the Sustainable Development Agenda, I think we have no room for exit. We need to work on this concerted effort for as long as we require prosperity for the people and the planet. So that was the approach used. People were working in silos. In that diagram, you saw that there was an issue, the water security challenge, and the problem that everybody works in silos, different agencies, everybody works on their own issue with minimal communication. So that was the biggest problem, working in silos, not cooperating, and therefore conflict often arose. So through discussion, raising awareness, the aim was to create a common understanding of the common risks that are faced in water security. And because these risks are common, therefore it pays if we all have a common approach. So getting stakeholders to all think in one direction is vital for that common approach, and eventually to have .org, which is organizations, .gov, which is government, and .com, the private sector, working together. So for the physical interventions that were identified, institutions that could support these physical interventions were identified, and ultimately the objective of everybody was to work on water security for the social and economic development of society. So the Water Security Action and Investment Plan is now in place. Then the implementation of these interventions is the next step. But, so I borrowed this from what was done under that project of developing the Water Security Action Plan and laying it against the Sustainable Development Goals, and then relating the role of various stakeholders, the need for collaboration, and seeing the complementarity that this approach of working on the Water Security Action Plan can actually have for us in addressing and meeting the SDG agenda. Now, let me go to a bit of details in terms of the specific roles. For the SDG agenda, the role of citizens, and this has been discussed already in our conference today, citizens are the primary agents of their development and ultimately are the beneficiaries of the Sustainable Development Goals. So citizens also have a role in meeting this SDG agenda. As we have heard, I think Katie made that presentation, that many citizens are not aware about the SDGs. So citizens have a role to inform themselves, actually, maybe to interest themselves in knowing and getting informed about the SDGs. Citizens should educate their friends, their colleagues, their families. We have also discussed that it starts with you and those closest to you. So as a citizen, you actually have a role to educate your friends, your colleagues, your families on the SDGs. I come at the end and it's nice. I'm simply emphasizing what has already been shared on this platform, educating our friends, our families, which eventually will impact the world. As citizens, we need to explore the realities of the SDGs and what they mean for our communities, that is contextualizing them. Then, citizens also on an individual level, we need to give of our time and our skills in whichever way possible. So, we can no longer wait for other people to work while we wait. We also need to get involved, give our time, skills. Everybody can do something. We can also donate. Yeah, many times, especially in the developing country context, we are always waiting for people to donate and we receive. To achieve the SDG agenda, a role that we can also play as citizens is also to donate to this cause. Now, the role of think tanks. I share this picture to give an example of a think tank that I belong to, and those are members of the Water, Environment, Energy and Food Nexus in Uganda, which is a think tank that involves academicians, it involves practitioners. So recently when we had the Lake Victoria levels rising, these people who are experts on the subject, they came together, went to Parliament and presented a paper to help parliamentarians understand and appreciate what is happening. So what can think tanks do? The role of think tanks, and this actually ties in with academic institutions in the SDGs agenda, think tanks provide a platform for knowledge sharing and joint learning. They are powerful convening platforms with the capacity to reach actors at all levels. In our think tanks, you have directors, you have commissioners, you have permanent secretaries, you have law key staff. So it's a platform that convenes together, that has the capacity to reach actors at various levels, both decision makers and implementers. So it's a powerful platform. So think tanks promote dialogue and stakeholder engagement and can be explored and play a crucial role in the SDG agenda. Also, think tanks create and communicate policy relevant knowledge, thus enabling greater dialogue between the general public and decision makers. Think tanks can engage to push systemic changes to both domestic and global stakeholders. Think tanks can be drivers of change by building on the work of individual institutions. So I see it in our think tank. Usually everybody is sharing on what they've done, different initiatives. So every day you can have a different subject and you have experts on that particular subject. So I think think tanks are also a good avenue and have a key role to play in the SDG agenda. You have brains, different experiences, various institutions coming together on one platform. Academic institutions generate new knowledge and evidence and also have a role to play in the SDG agenda. Academic institutions and centers of excellence for policy research, they can inform metrics to improve integrated monitoring on SDGs as well as strengthening evaluation mechanisms. They have the potential to engage the public, tackle innovation, as well as hold governments to account. Also, think tanks are global fora for debate, enabling sharing of national experiences and can easily influence the national agenda. One concern about think tanks, at least the think tank in Uganda has raised this issue, that technical capacity, which is usually available in these think tanks, is not enough. Financial capacity is equally key, and even more important to achieve anything is the political will. So governments also have a role to take ownership and establish policies and plans and programs that will promote progress of the SDGs. Now, when we were developing our water security action plan, we had this professor from the Industrial Economics Consulting Company, and he shared these words of wisdom. We need to change the way we think. And I feel that this actually applies also in our efforts to achieve the SDGs. We need to change the way we think. We need to think broadly. We need to think cooperatively. We need to conceive transformative policies and actions to change the old approaches and think differently. We need also to act. We need to develop informal working groups. We need to consider joint regional plannings. We need to develop integrative projects and also consider alternative institutional frameworks. Let's change from the old approach. And one thing I had captured from Doctor is his approach of now looking at the individual and the individual responsibility. I believe this is one way of thinking differently and looking at this cause from a different perspective. I will conclude by saying it can no longer be business as usual. Countries and international organizations across all levels, as well as public and private actors, need new knowledge and new ways of working, and some of those have been discussed on this platform. So I thank you for sharing, and I also thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. So the platform is open. Please ask Winifred few questions, anything. So I can also ask something, Winifred. So you're working with the think tanks. So how exactly think tanks are promoting in your area, do you think?
So I just gave one example of an issue that was facing the nation, and one effort that was made is for them, a few of the people who are experts on the subject, to go to parliament. They sought audience with the parliamentary representatives. Mm-hmm. You know, parliament is all as your parliament may be as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of people, maybe some understand the issues, some not so well, but think tanks have the role to explain and put things into context such that these parliamentarians who make decisions on behalf of all of us can appreciate the critical issues that are facing our countries and the different issues that we are dealing with. So that's one role that think tanks have played, to seek platform with parliaments to discuss some of the critical issues that may be around.